On this episode of Still Loading...
No problem, little man! Just step right into the pleasure zone and the pleasure will be yours! That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Go right in. You'll have so much fun. You'll never want to leave.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and it is the Season 1 finale for Captain N, the Game Master. We have made it a full year of watching the insanity, the insanity that is Captain N, if you forgive my pun there. But we are going to be talking about episode 13 of Season 1, Happy Birthday, Mega Man, but, of course... my co-host with, I've been saying this the last 3 episodes, I'm going to keep doing it. My co-host with the mo-host, Dexter Morrill. Dexter, how are you doing today?
You have to keep saying it as long as I have the most host. That's how you have to introduce me. Hello, everybody.
Every time. But we are ending the season off with a really big special guest. I'm so excited to invite him back on the show. This is his 3rd appearance on the show. Gabe Swarr is with us today. Gabe, how are you today?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. Thank you once again for coming on, man. We always like to have. We've been wanting to have more guests on for this Captain N series, and you are you're a perfect guest because you work in animation. For those who do not know, Gabe is one of the co-executive producers of the Animaniacs reboot. You've also worked on like the Kung Fu Panda TV show, as well as you did some of your earliest work was on Dexter's Lab. Like you've run the gamut of work in the animation industry. So I am so excited to have you on for this episode because
thanks for having me. I mean, this is one of my favorite shows, like growing up.
Is it really?
Yeah, of course. Come on, it's Captain N.
It is Captain N. Because I have questions about the decision making. Not that you would actually know; you weren't there in the room. But let's get started with this, as we do with every episode. And actually, you know what? Before we get into that, Dexter, I have something I have a bone to pick with you.
All right, let's pick it.
The first episode of this series, I listened back to it the other day. You were going to come up with a different Captain N team for each episode. Basically, like instead of Simon Belmont, Kid or Pitt, I keep calling him Kid Icarus, and Mega Man, you were going to be like, your first one, I forget, like instead of Mother Brain, it was like Gruntilda from Banjo-Kazooie. Like, who are you swapping out? And you abandoned that after the first episode.
You're right. And now I have a lot of backup work to do. You've given me a backlog of work to do.
We're going to have to make up over these next 12 episodes over season 2. You're going to have to do double duty.
Yes.
But no. So as we do with every episode, we're going to start off with what the first thing that stuck out to us was in this episode. Gabe, since you are our guest and you mentioned off mic you had one, let you go first. What was one of the things that stuck out to you the most in this episode?
I thought it was okay. So they go to the pleasure zone in this episode, and
they do,
and they want to be trapped there. Like they're trying to be trapped there by where all their wishes come true.
Yeah, and
it's funny that the princess's wishes are just clothing. Like she just wants all the clothes that she wants.
Shopping.
That's all it is.
Princesses be shopping,
deepest
right?
desire. That's what causes them most pleasure is clothes.
I like how that is, and it's just one of the most bare bones, like stereotypical things you could ever do. Oh, the princess likes clothes, of course.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Dexter, what about you?
For me, the thing that stuck out the most was how much everyone was like kind of jerks in this episode until the very end. Like every character has like this jerk moment, and I was like, are we supposed to like these characters?
For me, I don't think anybody knows what the definition of a robot is in this show.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody knows. Like, Mega Man is supposed to be a robot, And I don't think he even understands the definition of a robot, because he has all the emotions of a human. He still feels cold like a human, as you see at the very beginning of the episode. Even though as a robot, he really shouldn't. I don't know why he would feel cold. He's just like, why? And he complains about being a robot the whole episode, something he's never done over the course of the show up to this point. So this really comes out of nowhere that suddenly Mega Man just doesn't want to be a robot anymore.
And why wouldn't you want to be a robot? I mean, come on.
I don't understand his logic with this in the slightest, because he gains the benefits of being a human compared to a robot. In most media is presented as, you have emotions now, you can differentiate better between right and wrong, you right and wrong more, you understand more of the gray area and the nuances of life. But Mega Man has all that already. He has emotions. He understands the nuances of life. He actively makes a compassionate decision at the end of the episode, which we'll get into this episode. This episode is insane.
But in the beginning, I mean, I think what they're trying to set up is like, he's like an old man or something, because all the gifts he gets in the beginning for his birthday are like, it's like, I don't want to be an old man anymore. I want to have, that's what it feels like. It's like being a robot is like being an old man or something.
Well, I think this is actually the perfect way to transition directly into the first portion of this episode, where Mega Man is standing guard outside of the Palace of Power, where it's snowing for reasons, and he's cold for reasons, and
he's standing guard for some reason.
For reasons, yeah. Like
start.
They actually explain that the security system is down, so they need him to stand guard.
That's right. They also start with the montage music right away. I was shocked with the
yes. So that montage music, Gabe, I don't know if you've watched the whole series recently, but that's the filler music every time they couldn't get the licensed song that was supposed to be in there. So in this episode, there's 2 licensed songs: Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins and Shake It Up by the Cars. I don't know which spot they were supposed to go into. I could see Danger Zone for the beginning, because he's chasing a mysterious figure who we'll go into in a little bit. But I could also see that would make the most sense, in my opinion, in that moment, because Shake It Up by the Cars, I guess, would probably be in the Pleasure Zone in that one. But yeah, so Mega Man sees a mysterious cloaked figure as he's standing on guard, and they run into the castle, or run into the Palace of Power, and he's like, "Stop, or I'm going to Mega Blast you," because he's Mega Man. Everything's got to be Mega. And he runs through the door and chases after him, only to find out that the masked hooded figure was Simon all along, and it's a surprise birthday party for Mega Man.
Oh,
how nice!
It's a very elaborate plot. It was a very elaborate costume for Simon. It was a very
Dexter, it's foreshadowing for the whole episode.
I know.
For the whole episode, it's clear, well written. We love you, Jeffrey Scott. Please come on the show. It's clear, well written foreshadowing for the entire episode. And they go in and they all start giving him gifts. Now, what was your favorite? Well, I want to hear from each of you. What was the favorite gift? Your favorite gift that Mega Man got?
What were all of them? It was
I'll tell you what mine is.
Battery recharger, right?
There's a battery charger from Kevin. A battery charger from Kevin. And there was, my favorite was from Princess Lana. It was a cassette tape that teaches him how to exercise, which, once again, definition of a robot. He does not need to exercise. He does not have muscles. He is a robot. But foreshadowing for this episode. I wonder if that was all part of the plan. So, a spoiler alert for the end. Mega Man wants to become a human and does. So did she give him this program to teach him how to exercise now, so when he's a human he can stay in shape?
Ooh, maybe. I am actually starting to side with Gabe's idea that this is actually an allegory for being an old man. Like, yeah, we're going to keep you healthy, Grandpa, and this is going to help you sleep with the recharging of the battery. And then here's a girlfriend.
Yeah, it's super weird. It's really weird.
I think I'm coming to that. I think I'm starting to side with you on that too, because who was it? Simon. Simon gives him his mirror, which was actually really sentimental because Simon loves himself. He loves looking at himself, as we know in Pleasure Zone, because that's what lures him into Pleasure Zone is
But
just
it wasn't
mirrors.
his mirror, right? Like
it was his personal mirror.
Oh, I
really?
thought it was
Because
just
I
one
thought
that
that
looked
he
like
used it
his.
later, right?
I'm pretty sure he takes it back.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure, but he the other gift that I think it was Kid Icarus. Like I forget, no, who got it for him? Because Dr. Light, they called him Dr. Wright in the show for some reason, but Dr. Light was there, and they give him like a self-care kit. Like it's like screwdrivers and wrenches and stuff, so he can it's a self-maintenance kit for.
Yeah.
So I really think you're right with the robot, with the old man robot thing. You have a battery to help him recharge his batteries. You have a self-maintenance kit to help him take care of himself. You have an exercise tape to help him get exercise, and on top of that, this one might be a little bit more subtle. Duke gives him a rolled up piece of paper, which you find out later is a map, but he thinks it's a newspaper.
Yeah. See, I'm telling you, he's like retiring.
Man joke. Yeah.
It's like it's a retirement party or something.
I would feel bad if I didn't point this out to our listeners, because every episode Simon gets stuff on his face.
Yeah.
And so when Mega Man blew his candles out, all the icing came off onto Simon's face.
Always gets creamed. He always gets white cream on his face. It's just it's
some kind of sticky.
The animators must really like to put. But I can't even say the word.
I don't know if it's animators. I mean, that sounds like that would have been scripted. You know,
that would have been scripted.
Like that.
Jeffrey Scott, man, he really must have hated Simon because he keeps putting white stuff all over his face throughout the entire series.
They probably gave him Castlevania too, and he did not like it.
I genuinely wonder how much of the games he was able to play, because they call Donkey Kong Conga Land, but to be fair, there wasn't really like a name for Donkey Kong's world at the time. Like, and technically, if you played Metroid, the planet would be SR, not 388. What's the one from the original Metroid? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Or Zebes.
Zebes, yeah, that's it. SR 388's from like Alien, right?
Yeah, but I think there's a game where that's the planet as well.
I guess so.
It's just like, yeah,
it is from the SR388 is from Metroid, but I don't know which game it is. But it is from Metroid, so I wasn't completely off. But you're right, Zebes or Zebes or however you pronounce it is the planet from the first one. But like Mount Olympus or Mount Icarus or whatever it is, at least kind of makes sense for Kid Icarus. Megaland, like they don't really have names. Like you don't like Mega Man's world doesn't have a name, so I guess you have to kind of name it like. Yeah, Megaland, whatever. This will work. I don't blame him for that. Actually, in retrospect, I don't blame him for that. But so Dr. Light or Dr. Wright's gift, excuse me, is Mega Girl. Is that what they called her?
They never named her except for near the end.
Yeah. And Mega Man is pissed. He's like, I don't want a friend like me. And And I'm like, well, that's rude.
He must hate robots. I mean, that's what it must be. Like, he must hate robots. He hates himself, right? I mean, that's
got to be it.
But with Strangers, we find out at the end of the episode she's a human too.
Yeah.
This.
But he doesn't know that. I guess I don't know.
No. I'm so confused by the whole
And is the
thing.
only difference that you have a heart?
Apparently.
I also enjoyed that Mega Man was like, I don't like my birthday. It reminds me that I'm a robot. And I was like, your voice doesn't remind you constantly that you're...
I just think his voice reminds him that he sounds like Popeye. I don't know why. I never understood that when I was a kid. Why'd they make him sound like Popeye?
A lot of the choices I don't understand, like how Kid Icarus always has, like he calls him Mega Manicus at the beginning of this episode.
Doesn't he always add that to all of what he says, though? I mean, that's
not everything, but a large portion of it. Cavanicus, Simonius.
Yeah.
He should just speak Latin the whole time.
Or Pig Latin. That'd be bad.
And the first thing that stuck out to me about Duke's gift, by the way, is who gave Duke a treasure map? Like that was a huge red flag for me.
Yeah, like where I mean, it makes sense once you find out the end of the episode that, once again, spoiler alert, that all of this was planned by the N Team in the first place for Mega Man's birthday, which I find really suspect. I find that really shoehorned in. I don't know. I feel like
you guys got
they definitely didn't
reference,
go
right?
back to fix the idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No.
Because maybe Duke found the map himself. He's like the smartest member of the team. Then I don't know. Like, how does that happen?
Did we realize the Pinocchio reference though for this whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I did not
Pleasure
notice it.
Island.
I was gonna say I see the light bulb lighting up in Josh's eyes right now.
I don't remember.
And-
Dude,
'cause when I
the
saw
last time I
af-
saw Pinocchio I was so little, so I don't remember the plot of it at all.
Well, he was talking about being a real boy, so to speak, and I saw at the
Oh my
bottom of
God,
the
yeah,
map
okay.
was a whale,
Now
and
I
I was
feel
like,
really
okay.
dumb.
Because Pleasure Island, is that where the theme park was in Pinocchio?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it is just a big. Yeah. Okay. That I like it. So Mega Man unfurls after he runs away and he's disappointed that Dr. Wright got him Mega Girl or a robot in it because it reminds him that he's a robot and he doesn't want to be a robot. And I always thought the one line that really was confusing me. He goes, easy for you to say when you have a heart instead of like a metal pipes or something like that. And I'm like, what is this I hate being a robot thing? And I really feel like if the message of this episode is that it's okay to be different, they failed at it because the whole thing is him trying to conform to what he thinks the world should be. Like, because everyone else is a human, so I should be a human too, instead of enjoying the fact that he's different.
See, I'm a big fan of Mighty Orbots. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that cartoon. That's another 80s cartoon.
I never
the
heard of that
greatest
one,
show
though.
ever. But it's like a robot team. They're like Voltron, right? And there's an exact same plot where the girl, the youngest member, wants to not be a robot anymore. She wants to be human. So she goes to a planet and she actually becomes human. And then what happens is they can't form the robot because she's like the key. So that's like the most effective way of telling that story. Like, if you turn into a human, then you're not. You got to use what did Kevin say in the beginning?
That made you unique.
Yeah, make the best of what we have, or whatever. Like, if that's the message, this is totally opposite of that. So everything what makes you unique away, and that's your reward. Like, that's your reward for not thinking of yourself. Like, it's so like not figured out.
It's not a well orchestrated message for kids at all. I like it. Yeah. Don't stand out. You're wrong for you're wrong for being different. You need to match everybody else that you know. I thought that was a really weird message. That was, come on, Jeffrey Scott. I mean, we love you. Come on the show. So Mega Man wants to be human and he finds out that, Dexter, I don't know why I said Dexter, Duke, gives the newspaper, quote unquote, that he gives him is actually a map to what I forget what it's called. Do you remember what
life, right? The warp of life.
The warp of life. Everything's a warp. I keep forgetting about that. The warp of life. And so he decides to go on this adventure and find the warp of life so he can become human. Which, as this episode goes on, I get more annoyed at Mega Man in this because he keeps dragging his friends into increasingly dangerous situations.
No, they're in on it. So this is all planned. Like,
this was their
They knew
idea.
exactly how to get out of the whirlpool. They knew how to get out of Pleasure Island or Pleasure Zone.
There's so much writing.
This is all planned. They're all in on it. So there's no danger.
I just love how, like, all right, Gabe, as someone who works in the industry, do you really think that they planned out that ending beforehand, or do you think they needed find a way to end it so it would explain some? Because like
I bet you this had to do something with notes because we always get notes like story notes and from the execs and everything. And it feels to me like they had a very simple story, and then either they handed it out to a writer that didn't get it. And then Jeffrey Scott had to fix it because Jeffrey Scott's like the story editor, which means that there's probably other people that write the script and then he brings it in and he tries to fix it or make everyone kind of sound the same, So either it was like, it started off as a simple thing. It went out to a freelance writer, came in, or it was written in-house and then they got weird notes and they just kind of half-ass fixed it. Because to me, it feels like it's like there's a dumb note and then along the way, or it was really bad, and then they just kind of hobbled it together, and then they're like, it's good enough. And then it just goes to animation, like that's probably what happened. You know,
Especially with the things that they say at the end, and I know we'll get to it. Like the things that the characters are saying, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, and they
I
needed a
mean,
way to explain it.
you also have to think that this is the 13th episode of the season, so they probably were cramming to get this done. Like this is probably like
Yeah.
probably got the least amount of time than everything else because they were probably crammed at the end. You know,
Actually, I would love for you to watch episode 2 if you haven't seen it in a while.
I
Episode
have not seen
2
it for a long time. Which one's that one?
is it's called How's Bayou. It's where you meet Bayou Billy.
Oh,
There are some major animation errors in it where they fall through quicksand, and we talk about this in the episode decks about how like why is quicksand like this universal thing back then where like everyone I was terrified of quicksand as a kid, even though I grew up in rural Pennsylvania where there is no quicksand at all, but whatever. They fall through like a quicksand sinkhole, and they come across this alligator that's going that looks like it's about to attack them. Well, when it cuts to the alligator, there's no background on the alligator. It's just the cell.
well, the reason that there are so many mistakes in these shows is because back then they were doing everything on film, like it wasn't done digitally. So to do retakes would have cost a lot of money, and there's only so much budget at the end of making the show to pay for retakes. So a lot of times they're like, can we afford to do this? Is it worth doing this? Will people notice this? There's always that. And sometimes it's like the people that are calling retakes at the very end aren't the animators too. Sometimes it could be Jeffrey Scott or whoever the other producer is like, no one will notice, you know?
Specifically in episode 2, it's egregious. Like I'm not talking about like one shot. The original airing of this episode, this is on Wikipedia, and I can confirm it from the video from the episode I watched, was an unfinished version, which included some shots missing their backgrounds, and there were some shots completely cut out because you see the alligator missing its background, and then all of a sudden you see Bayou Billy petting the alligator. Like there's nothing in between. You don't see him come in to rescue them. You don't see, it's all of a sudden it's just alligator and then Bayou Billy petting the alligator.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to like the overseas studio. Like whoever animated that and they got stuff back, they're just probably like, we have 2 weeks to turn us around. What do we do? And they probably just made the best they could with what they had. I mean, especially if there was like stuff that was in it and then they re-aired it later with more stuff, they must have went back, reopened it up, redid all the animation,
supposedly when they re-aired it, like the background's behind the alligator, but the cut that they put on the DVD still doesn't have the background, so they didn't. So for the official release of it now is the part without the background.
They were also doing like really bad video fixes back then too, like where they would just like do it in video instead of on film. So
oh my god,
I don't know if you guys notice, like when you watch 80s cartoons, there's always like a held cell at some point where it's like jittering. Like, do you ever notice that? It's because they just do like a video edit for that, because sometimes the episodes aren't long enough, so they'll just like pause to make sure that the episode's long enough. Or if they cut stuff out, they have to reach a certain length, and then they put stuff like that in there. There's like one moment in this one that I noticed, so we'll get to that.
I did the only animation error, or I shouldn't say error because I don't know all the technical terms, but I consider an error is it was like 11 minutes in or so, Dex, at when Mega Man rescues everyone from the pleasure zone, which we'll get to. His mouth is up in his mask, and it's like you see the smile in his nose like going up into his eyes. I thought that was kind of funny, but okay.
I was actually impressed that there weren't more, because I remember the show being really, really bad as a kid. Even I remember like, oh man, like the characters walking backwards or not on the ground, or like the wrong characters and scenes, and like
the previous
not as bad as like Transformers or something, but pretty bad. And yeah, I was actually surprised that there wasn't worse than that. That thing with Mega Man, like it's because his mouth isn't registered. Like I could tell you like why it happens. You know that. When they shot it, they didn't register the pegs correctly. So his mouth is up here. It's supposed to be down further. So if you could get a cell set up, you could put it on the pegs correctly, it probably would line up. You know?
Huh. Interesting.
Cool. Yeah, there was a lot of errors in the previous episode, like Metroid, the ship flies through the background, but they didn't put it on the very back layer, so it's like looks like a tiny ship in front of people flying by.
It's great.
I love that stuff. All right, so let's continue on with the story. We're gonna get to Pleasure Zone pretty quickly, actually. Which, out of context, that clip could be really bad. So the map leads them first to Mega Man takes them on this journey, and the map first leads them to a fabulous ruby castle, and that was what it was called, a fabulous ruby castle. And I love whoever, like, this Wizard of Oz style character that's in there, where they have this big booming voice, and then it cuts out as just this tiny little small guy who even says, "Hey, you're a small guy just like me," says that to Mega Man. I love his character design. He's a little tiny dude on roller skates, and he has like this kind of like fairy-ish look. I don't know. What did you guys think of him?
Just Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah. I thought it was like kind of like Willy Wonka or something. Like it felt.
I could see
but
that.
But the dumb thing. Okay, first of all, the dumb thing about them doing the Ruby Castle with the wizard and everything is right before that they do like a Wizard of Oz reference. So like why would you do it like right before you do a Wizard of Oz thing? I guess that's the setup. I have no idea. Because remember, he said something about Hollywood Land. He's like, Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, that's another. I don't know. It's so dumb.
That's another land I can show you if you ever come over to my world or something like that.
Yeah.
But actually, Jeffrey Scott has a lot of like random references. There's an episode a couple episodes ago where he constantly keeps referencing the Three Stooges like over and over and over again. It's like so much so like where I think Kevin calls Eggplant Wizard and King Hippo Stooges, and then they morph into Larry, Moe, and Curly.
Of course.
It was a very strange thing. I'm like, it was funny. Like I enjoyed the joke of it, but it was still very strange. Actually, it is worth noting that the main villain of the entire show is not in this episode at all. Mother Brain, they've always shoehorned her into things. Otherwise, like she'd be talking to the main villain of the episode, like orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. This one, it's just she's not in it at all.
The N Team is the villain in this one.
Pretty much.
Yeah, they also had a very Warner Brothers style joke before going into the castle too, with the drawbridge falling on Simon, and he's like kind of accordioned.
I actually really liked that joke, and he's like, "Wait, how did you get down? How did you get all the way up here?" or something like that.
About Mega Man,
yeah. I liked that portion. I really liked. I think you're right, Dex. There's a lot of Warner Brothers style comedy in this episode. I feel like between Simon getting like it was very much, what is that? 90 Night Bugs is the one where Yosemite Sam keeps getting slammed into the ground by the drawbridge. That's what it reminds me of. It's funny. I totally forgot that I even wrote down it was a Looney Tunes joke. So when we were talking off mic, Dex, that you reference all the Looney Tunes stuff, I was like, is it? I wrote it down. Apparently it is. So the Warp Wizard is the character that is a little dude on roller skates, and Mega Man basically asks him, like, I hear like this map tells me that you have a shortcut to the next step to the Pleasure Zone. He's like, oh, I do, and it's quicker than you might think. And then he pulls a lever or whatever, and the floor drops out from underneath them, and they fall into the Pleasure Zone.
But since they're all in on it, they came there earlier. They talked to the wizard. They figured out, like, because
you're going to keep us here
they
for
were
3
already
weeks.
there. Dr. Wright was already there, so they know exactly how to like where they're going and what's going on. So
we know this is so elaborate because they literally keep him there for 3 weeks. Simon at the end of it is like, oh, Simon Belmont knew exactly how like that we were being duped or whatever. It didn't take me long at all. And then he looks down at what his watch or whatever. 3 weeks. So, what an elaborate play. Like, we're gonna let's say this is let's suspend our disbelief here and just go along with their story. They planned this out for like a 4-week excursion for Mega Man's birthday. They must really like Mega Man.
How long were they going to give him if they knew about this?
That's true. How they could have just been stuck in Pleasure Zone forever.
Yeah. He had to break out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
They had to like stay there until he came up with the idea to, hey, wait a minute. That's why I'm here.
Can I just say the Pleasure
It's
Zone
my birthday for 3 weeks.
I really wish he would have said that bluntly. It's my birthday for 3 weeks. I kind of really want that. But in the pleasure zone, everyone gets distracted by things that they find enjoyable. I wrote it all down. Simon mirrors. He loves to look at himself. He's so vain that he likes to look at himself. Kevin gets into video games. Duke gets food. Lana, like you mentioned before, Gabe, clothes and fashion. Dr. Wright, not Light, Dr. Wright gets a robotics lab, which he then uses to give Mega Man a happiness chip. And just to show which character is under love, Kid Icarus gets nothing. There's not
that's right.
one thing.
That's right.
He's never shown what is there for him in Pleasure Zone.
Probably cut. Probably too long. Probably was too long.
I could see that. Then Mega Girl like follows after them, and here's my issue with Pleasure Zone. One, why is any of this a bad thing for the N team? If they're stuck in there forever, they are cared for, they get food and sustenance, they have places to sleep, and they live a happy life for the rest of their lives. Like, I see no downsides to staying in this place at all. They have their quote unquote family there. Like, they're totally fine. Like, so what if the Palace of Power gets taken over? They're in Pleasure Zone. They're happy. So this plan makes no sense as to like there has to be some type of downside. The only reason that this is evil is because the voice actor in the animation for the dude running Pleasure Zone tells you it's evil. The plan itself is not in the slightest.
Well, don't forget, they've already been
good
here.
Time for eternity.
Don't forget, they've already been here. They know what Pleasure Zone is because they already did all this for Mega Man earlier. They planned it all out, right? Because Dr. Wright was already there, which we reveal later, right? So he's already been on this quest.
And the guy running it doesn't recognize them for some reason.
Why wouldn't he take his first created child thing on this quest first before Mega Girl?
Well, maybe he didn't think they were going to make it. So she's expendable, right? She's a woman. That's the way that they write that.
Well, I mean, she's expendable. She doesn't matter.
I mean, that's what he kind of says at the end there. But
yeah.
Does he say? What does he say?
Oh my god! Yeah, at the end he's like, I can build a new one, Mega Man. You don't have to save her.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god. Yeah. This was before the twist is revealed, so it's very jarring.
No one is very nice in this episode at all. But then the other issue that I have with Pleasure Zone is that if Mega Girl shows up and she's the one that knocks Mega Man out of it, like, what was she doing for 3 weeks?
She's been watching them the whole time.
But what, like, if she knows it's a trap?
She's a creep. I mean, what else would she be doing? She's been waiting for the whole time, like for 3 weeks.
That's how she gets pleasure, is by watching them like a creep.
Yeah, that's her pleasure.
So she's... Who would have thought that Mega Girl would have just been there for... she was...
Up to this point, she hasn't talked, right? She hasn't said anything yet.
She's just a pleasure cock, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say about, speaking of Warner Brothers cartoons earlier, the guy who hosts the Pleasure Zone reminds me of a creature or something from Wacky Land.
Yeah,
like I feel like that's a character design thing from Wacky Land, having like the little, hand coming out of the head.
I could totally see that.
He's got that kind of.
I wonder if this is Phil Barlow, because Phil Barlow is doing a lot of he did a lot of character design for this show.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he's one of my favorite designers, and it could be his design because he's amazing.
Yeah, the design.
He did the Alf cartoon. I don't know if you guys ever watched the Alf cartoon in the 80s. And he also did
I watched Alf as a kid, but I didn't watch the Alf cartoon. I didn't know there was an Alf cartoon, actually.
Yeah, like he's still around, and he does comics, and I'm a Patreon of his. So
what's his name again?
Phil Barlow. He's amazing. He's great. He did a comic called Zooniverse back in the 80s, which that's where I first saw his work. And then years later, I found out he did the Alf cartoon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that guy's great. And so he worked for Deke, and he worked on like all the Deke shows. Like, and then he went to Sony and he worked on like Godzilla, and he designed all the Extreme Ghostbusters. He's great.
Oh, but is it spelled Fil?
Fil, yeah.
Okay,
because you can tell that like the Dracula design in this cartoon like is his design, and it's an awesome design. You know, like that's definitely 100% his. And he probably did Mother Brain too, because it has a lot of his like design stuff. So He's great.
That makes a lot more sense because when I search Phil Barlow the other way with PHIL, he's a Mormon history scholar. It's very
That's not
different.
him.
That's not him in the slightest. That's crazy though. And he also, I'm looking at some of the other stuff he did. Like I see the Alf credit, and this isn't even on IMDb. This is just his Wikipedia. But he did the character designs for 8 Crazy Nights, the Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah. Like, he might be cool to have on the show. You know what I mean? I could
Absolutely
maybe reach out to him, see if he's interested.
I would love that. That would be so cool. Just
seems
to
like
see.
A really nice guy. Super nice. So.
That would be awesome because
he did the designs for Igor. I remember that movie.
Oh, I think I don't know if I do remember this. I never saw it, but I do remember. I might be able to get I can't guarantee, but in the fall of this year, there's a convention near me where Venus Terzo is going to be, and she's the voice of Princess Lana in this.
Oh.
So I'm going to try to reach out to her. If I can find a DVD copy of Captain N, they're hard to find on Amazon and eBay, but if I can find one, then maybe I'll get her to sign it or something like that. Or I'll get her to sign our Captain N t-shirt.
Oh, snap. That'd be awesome.
I just realized I completely gave that away. I was going to save that for the end of the episode. So
you can cut
real
that
quick,
out.
Listeners. No, I'll just say it right now. We have, we'll go into it more, but Dexter here designed a t-shirt that you can buy on the Still Loading podcast merch store. I'll include a link in the description, but it's a Still Loading Captain N t-shirt. So we'll kind of talk a little bit more about it at the end, but so be on the lookout for that. Yeah. Anyway, so the way that Mega Man gets out of Pleasure Zone is that Mega Girl comes in and kind of distracts him for a second. So maybe that's how they planned the 3 weeks. They told, all right, Mega Girl, you cuck it out for 3 weeks and wait. And and then after 3 weeks, you come in, and if Mega Man still doesn't get it, you knock some sense into him and see what he does.
Yeah,
without saying one word, because she still hasn't talked yet.
I think she says something there where she's like, it's a trap. She talks then. But she hasn't said anything up until the portion where they're all on the Ferris wheel. Now, it's funny. I actually
and her
paused
voice. Like, I just got to say, I cannot take her voice. I can't. Those kinds of voices, I can't take. I just can't do it.
The thing about her, the reason I know she's talking is because I remember laughing out loud while watching the episode, because when she's explaining to them what's going on at Pleasure Zone, I know it was an animation thing, but Mega Man's face is just like it's frozen on this half-lidded, I do not care face. I think it was just that's the drawing they had for that shot, but it looks like he's so mad at her.
I don't know. He's so mean to her the whole time.
The whole show. And he apologizes to her after she helps him get out of Pleasure Zone. Once again, what a weird sentence. After she helps him get out of Pleasure Zone, and then he's like, I don't want your help anymore now. You go back to the Palace of Power. And then she cries. She literally cries. He makes her cry.
Yeah. Yeah. But before that, are we up to how they get rid of the host yet of the Pleasure Zone?
We should talk about that. Right before, I do want to say we've talked about this during the episodes before of when we find those screenshot stills that we want to use for the thumbnail. Dexter and I were torn between two, and I think and this ties into what you just said, Gabe. The first one we were toying with to use as the thumbnail for this is Mega Man in clown makeup because it's terrifying. But I think it's a little too scary looking. I feel like that's not a good way to advertise this episode, is just Mega Man in clown makeup. But the other one is the way they get rid of this, the carnival barker or whatever he is of Pleasure Zone. So Gabe, sorry, you take it away because you wanted to talk about this.
Yeah. So what happens is Mega Man realizes that they've been there for 3 weeks, and then he goes, "That's it." And he goes down to the guy, and what's his line? It's really dumb. He's like,
the guy says, don't you want to throw balls at fishes or something like that?
Yeah. And then he rolls him up into a ball, right? And then he kicks him into the distance, and he lands in a giant pot of water, I guess, right? Like a carnival game. And then he sinks to the bottom. But then there's these weird fish that are in there that have human faces, and they're terrifying. They're terrifying.
I love
Is
how
that the image you're thinking of choosing?
the him holding him before he kicks him is the image I think we're going to use for the thumbnail, because like he's all balled up and you see this crazy face on him. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And he kicks him off. And I think this might go back to what you're saying when they're trying to find ways to pad out the time of the episode, because they didn't need to show as much as they did of the dude like turning back into his normal form and all the fish just staring at him. Like there's no purpose to that scene. It's not like the fish look angry like they're going to eat him. He just kind of extends out. He's like, "Oh, here I am," and then it cuts, and you don't.
I mean,
it's almost
it
like
might
they're
just
going
be
to come
bad
back to it later.
storyboarding. Might be bad storyboarding too. Like it's probably just like, you know.
I went back to look, and those fish faces are hysterical.
Oh my gosh, they're so scary.
They look so confused too. They just like, what are you doing in here? I love this. This episode I actually think is a great episode to end season 1 on, because as much as like the pleasure zone thing, like really it bored me a little bit, but once they escape from pleasure zone, like how they like the whole part of them actually doing the escaping from pleasure zone, I found really funny. And just I love the design of the carnival barker too. I'm like looking at him now. He has I didn't realize this till right now. Around his neck, and right now I'm at 12 minutes and 1 second in, so you can see if you're curious about what I'm seeing. The hat, he has a hat on, but he doesn't wear it on his head. The top part of the hat is like cut open almost like a can, like the lid of a can, and it's around his neck, and the hat brim is resting on his shoulders. And I just noticed it right now, like, because he can't wear a hat because he's got like that hand on the top of his head. And I kind of really think that's kind of funny. And he's got 2 ties on. He's got 2 different ties on, one with stripes and one with polka dots. I'm noticing all of this right now. And his mouth makes me very uncomfortable. His teeth are larger than his nose. Anyway.
I think he has 3 ties. One of them's solid.
Oh, it might be a green tie.
He's got 2 on either side on the outside of his coat, and he's got 1 like where you normally wear a tie, where it's tucked into his coat.
You're definitely right. Does
he have
no, I do think it's
like, I think he has like some kind of like, what is he wearing on his shoulders? Is it like a manhole or a top of a can or something? Because it looks
what
like
I'm saying. That looks like the hat that I was talking about. Like they cut open the top of his hat and to fit his head through, because he can't wear it on his head. Yeah, it looks like a top hat, right? With a really wide brim, with a really big brim around, like that does a 360 around the whole thing. That's kind of like what I did. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, Gabe. Like if you pause a YouTube video, you can use the caret keys to advance frame by frame.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through it now because I pulled it down because I was like, I got to see this. Gotta go frame by frame on a lot of this stuff. So.
I love it. Even just like some of the, like I'm right now, I paused a frame at like 11:59, and both him and Mega Girl both have one eye closed and they're just staring at each other. It's really weird looking.
Is that the image that you're going to use?
It could be. It could be.
So Mega Man's really mean to her right now, right? Like this is what happens in the episode. We come back and then he's just like horrible to her.
Not a good human being he's not a human yet. Not a good robot being in the slightest.
Although I have to call Mega Girl out, because knowing what we know at the end, because she's trying to talk him out. She's like, "Don't do this. You don't need to be alive." And then we find out at the end that she is. So like, is she tortured by the fact that she's a human, or is she legitimately like, or is she trying to like keep him from becoming because she's jealous? Like, now I'm wondering about the incentive here of like why she's trying to talk him out of it.
They really could have added an extra 10 minutes of just drama between those two, discussing the philosophical differences of being what it means to be a human versus a robot. That would have been totally perfect for a children's cartoon.
Well, I mean, if you're not, now I'm alive, he says at the end, right? Does that mean he's dead the whole time? So if he's dead, then how does he have a birthday?
Well, they even say at the beginning he doesn't really have a birthday. It's the date he turned on.
Oh.
then that's why he hates his birthday, because he wasn't ever really born or something like that. But they escape Pleasure Zone. You find out they were in there for 3 weeks, and Simon is like, "Well, I knew it all along. It didn't take me long." And that's when you find out the 3 weeks thing. And after this, Kevin and Lana, and now it makes more sense for the end of the episode, but still, Kevin and Lana are remarkably well adjusted for losing 3 weeks of their life. They're just like, huh, shit happens. That's pretty much their
time
reaction
flies
to
when
it.
you're having fun.
Yeah, that was exactly what they said. Time flies.
I thought that they were going to have a pun or something with that line, but they just legit just deliver that line.
I did find it funny. If you look, I paused the frame on the map. I don't remember what timestamp it's at, but when you look at the map that Duke gives Mega Man to take him to all these places to get to the warp zone of life, they actually they have everything. Like, it has from the Palace of Power an arrow to the Ruby Palace or whatever it is, then an arrow to a Ferris wheel, which is obviously where it ended. Like, how did they know they were going to end in the Ferris wheel? I mean, they planned the whole thing. And then it has an arrow to a boat, and then obviously the boat to the warp zone of life. And now we are actually at that boat portion where they get to like this ocean. And like, well, how are we going to get across? We need a boat. And Dr. Light pretty much pulls a Dragon Ball Z Capsule Corp, but with an inflatable boat, and just whips one out of his pocket. And here, Mega Man, blow this up. Which, once again, why does Mega Man want to do this? Because if he becomes human, he can't do that. He can't. The way he saves them in the next scene, he couldn't do as a human.
And he even, the thing that annoyed me was that Dr. Wright calls it, "I've got an ocean-going vessel," and then when they blow it up, it's a boat. I was like, what? Why didn't he call it a boat? I was expecting ocean-going vessel to be like some crazy like submarine, like some crazy like robotic.
Something that's like in Mega Man, right? Like
yeah, right.
Like
especially by calling
like,
it an ocean-going vessel. I was like, okay, he wouldn't call it that if it was just going to be a boat.
Why is Simon surprised though? Because there's a boat on the map, like that he just looked at.
That he's a part of. He
knows
it's going to be there.
It looks just like what they made too.
No,
if you looked at that map though, there's another section it's like a planet with things around it that is not in the episode. Like there's probably another beat that was cut. Like under his shoulder was like a planet with like a bunch of stuff around it.
I feel like that we could dissect this and see like what else they missed, or what else not they missed. They had to cut out due to time constraints.
Oh yeah, it's like a Saturn planet. I see it.
I'm going to try to find the timestamp for it myself. But yeah, they Dr. Wright gives Mega Man a boat to like blow up with his, to inflate. And then Simon goes, I wrote down what he said. "You wouldn't happen to have an inflatable mountaintop with a 64-room castle, would you?" And Dr. Light goes, "Oh, in fact, I do." And then he tries to blow it up, and not a great joke, but he tries to blow it up and can't, because obviously that would be insane. Then when they cast off, this is one of the...
but before they blow it up, it looks like a weird like cow stomach or something. Like I don't know what it is. Like
it kind of looks like one of those weird,
it's really weird,
like a potato with growths on it.
It's like one of those weird water bags. That's what it looks like. Like you were saying, made out of like leather or like cow stomach or something like that. Yeah, it's really gross.
But after they blow it up, the way they cast off, Dr. Light just pops the anchor. He just takes a pin out. I'm like, that's really dangerous. Like, don't just take a pin out on an inflatable boat. Like, I understand what you're doing, but wouldn't that pop the whole thing? Everything, theoretically, if this is inflatable. Well, one, how can you have an inflatable anchor? It would just float.
Yes.
Well, plus Kid Icarus can't lift it.
Yeah. It was too heavy to lift.
So it's
a heavy balloon, I guess. That's how they work.
Is it just filled? Like, is the bottom half of the anchor filled with sand instead of air?
Maybe just the chain's a balloon. The anchor's real.
There we go.
I love that idea. Just like, well, that's so dumb. I love it.
Doesn't make any sense.
I actually thought that's how they were going to get out of the whirlpool that they get stuck in. That they're just going to pop the boat and like the thrust of the air was going to push them out.
Yeah, that would make way too much sense, though.
No,
And to be set up with the chain, you know.
You can't have you couldn't that way. If you do that, you won't have Mega Man pulling a Superman and swimming against the current of the whirlpool to reverse the flow of the whirlpool.
I mean, but he could also like try to rely on something that's robotic about him to pop it, like Needle Man or something, you know, like I don't know.
That would have been cool.
The whole
But being a robot's bad, so you don't want to do that.
But even though the whole reason they are able to survive is because he's a robot. They can't blow up the ship. It would have made more sense if all of his trials were to teach him something about being a human, but every single trial is only solved by him being a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets them out of the pleasure zone by literally lifting them in the Ferris wheel. He gets them on a boat by literally blowing up the boat himself, which no human could do because it's impossible. And then he literally saves them on that boat because he can literally swim so fast that he can reverse the direction of a whirlpool. And then at the very end, he saves Mega Girl by punching a warp whale.
the Monstro allegory from Pinocchio.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now that you've said it, Gabe, about getting the notes, I'm wondering if the end of this episode was that he decided not to go through the warp, and that someone was like, well, then this episode is pointless. He has to go through the warp at the end, you know? And so now they have to come up with a convoluted reason, like why everyone was a jerk. It's like, you know, like, oh,
yeah, I have a feeling that's probably what happened. Like, it feels like they had a story that worked.
Yeah, especially with everything showing how him being a robot was helpful. Like, that had to have been how it ended. That makes way more sense.
When they're getting sucked into the whirlpool, did you guys notice that one moment where, you know, everyone's in danger, and then you cut to Kevin and Lana, and they look at each other and they just stare at each other for a second. They just share a moment, and they're not scared. Like, it's really weird. Is that because they're in on it? Like, what? I didn't understand what that moment was. Like, were they supposed to like kiss because they thought they were going to die or something? Or
that's how I saw it. It was very awkwardly done, but I think that was the intent. But
for like the last 3 episodes, Lana and Kevin have been flirting around a kiss. Like, they've been flirting, they've been having this flirtatious relationship. Like, will we kiss, will we not kiss, but we're not gonna because it's a kid's show. It's a very strange, the only thing that's missing is you're gonna find out Princess Lana is his sister. They're just gonna go full Star Wars on be a great plot twist. Like, at the end of season 2, you find out that Kevin had a long lost sister that got sucked into Videoland as well, that his parents never told him about.
I also like this is when they're about to get sucked into the whirlpool, right? And we cut to commercial, then we come back and they're about to die, and then they totally shoehorn in water shorted out Kevin's pause button, right? Like, yeah, it's like a total afterthought.
Also, they pressed the select button, so I think that was the actual problem.
Or were they in on it? Supposedly, right? Like,
that could be it too.
This whole episode, I was so mad at the end of it because I'm like, what do you mean you were all in on this? Are you serious right now? So then it just felt like this whole episode was pointless because it didn't teach Mega Man any worthwhile, and it didn't teach him a lesson at all.
There's a new lesson at the end. Like, they came up with a different reason, right? Like, he was not thinking of himself, right?
Yeah, it was being okay there, but they could have cut out everything in between and just had one trial to illustrate it, because the other trials don't illustrate being selfless at all. Like, it would have made more sense if every trial had some subtext, even if it wasn't obvious, of Mega Man being selfless, and that's what it meant to be human, is to be selfless or something like that. But they never do that, and they could at least give a whole bunch of exposition at the end and explain oh, when you did this in Pleasure Zone, was very selfless of you, and that's what it means to be human. And when you did this at the Ruby Castle, that was selfless, and that's how we knew you're ready to have a beating heart. He really lays into the fact that he doesn't have a heart a lot in this episode too. I thought that was very strange. But before they do find the warp zone of life, or the whatever it is, whatever you call it, I can't remember half these names. Kid Icarus yells "Land Hoicus." But this I thought was funny. When they're walking off the boat, you hear wooden footsteps. It's shoes on wood, even though it's a rubber boat. So how about that?
Wood
Inflatable
from a
wood?
rubber
Is this a new
tree.
technology in Videoland? Inflatable wood?
Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe only the chain was inflatable. I'm telling you.
Everything else, Mega Man just like blew a boat into existence. Why would you get rid of that power then? You can just like, you're basically Jesus at that point if you can just manifest a boat out of nothing.
Maybe it was just that one link of the chain too. Like the rest of the chain was a normal chain.
Or what if it was like the inflatable thing was on the inside and it was actually hard physical objects on the outside. So when you blow up the balloon and it expands, all the pieces form together with the balloon inside of it, and then you just pop the inside and you have a boat.
You figured it out.
That's it, clearly.
Yes.
That straight up Capsule Corp the whole time. So Mega Man is forced to, he's about to go through the warp of life, only to find out that Mega Girl is about to get killed or something by a warp whale, and Mega Man has to choose between saving her and going through the warp of life. He of course saves her. That's the very shoehorned in moral of this episode.
But that's not what convinces. He doesn't make the decision on himself. Well, I guess he does, but what convinces him, right, is Simon's line. Like, just think about yourself like I do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that convinces him to not be like Simon. So what, does he not listen to Simon's advice? Because everyone hates Simon, I guess? Is that what's going on?
Simon says, don't look a gift warp in the mouth. And that made me chuckle.
Oh, that one hurt. That one hurt me. There's so many puns in this show that just hurt me. So hold on, what did I write? Yeah. So then it gets to the end of the episode and you find out this whole thing was orchestrated by the N team for Mega Man's birthday. Stuff we know, we've covered this throughout the episode, but the whole thing was orchestrated by the N team for Mega Man's birthday. And Mega Girl already did all this, and she's actually human too. And what was the point of this episode? I loved it, mind you. But listeners, you should watch it. But what was the point of this episode?
I want to know why this is like a fan favorite too, because this is like one of. I was looking up like the most popular episodes, and this is one of the most popular episodes. And I'm like, I don't get it.
Wow.
Yeah.
No way.
No, absolutely not. I think. Actually, Dexter, think on this a little bit. I just thought of this now. So this is kind of like happening on the fly. Think of what your favorite episode of season 1 was, and we'll just kind of say it at the end, like towards the when we get to the end of the episode today. Right. I have the list open for myself, so I don't know if you want to look it up, but that pretty much is how this episode ends. You know, the last line is the warp of life goes, hold on, I have a very important message to give all of you, Mega Man. And he goes, what is it? And she goes, happy birthday, Mega Man. And then they all laugh. They give it a chuckle.
Even the warp of life is in on this joke about being a jerk on his birthday.
Yeah, the 3-week birthday.
The 3-week birthday. That's what this episode should have been called. That was my high school band's name, the 3-week birthday.
My note at the end I wrote, so dumb. That was my note that I wrote when I got to the end of the episode.
I'm trying to think if I have any other notes that I missed that I didn't get to talk about. What did I write? I can't even read my own handwriting right now. I did quote a lot of stuff about like throughout the episode, but I just thought it was weird that Mega Man wants to be human. There's literally, they don't present any benefits of being a human compared to himself throughout the entirety of the episode. So even if the whole lesson is to be like, you were selfless, it still doesn't make sense why he wants to be a human, because he literally has all the emotions and all the feelings of a human, but the superpowers of a robot. I don't understand his motivation for wanting to become human is simply out of being like, I don't like being different, which is an awful lesson to teach kids, to be afraid to be different.
I bet you what happened with this was like someone probably wrote the script and they got a note, and then someone else went in and changed the ending. I think that's exactly. I think you nailed it. I think that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
That's what
because
it
it doesn't
like.
make any sense. Like the whole setup and everything doesn't make any sense. If he wouldn't have become a human, then it would have made more sense.
Yeah.
And the very end, like you can tell. I think you can tell when that decision was made if you look at the reactions of the characters, like Princess Lana and Kevin at the beginning of the episode. When Kevin tells him about the warp of life, Princess Lana goes, "Nice job." I forget what she calls. She calls him some name, and he goes, "What did I do?" And that, like, why would he say that if this was all in on the plan? Like, that's literally only for. That's the Mega Man wasn't there. It's not like they were selling that to anybody at that point. Mega Man had already walked off, so it's not like they had to act like Princess Lana was mad at Kevin for telling him to go along with their plan. That's literally just for the audience.
But it also fits in with like all those other moments they have together, where like he does something wrong and then she's like storms off in a huff. Like that could have just been like, we need that like storm off in a huff moment, because what did I do? Like it feels like that's his almost like catchphrase in the show,
And then at the end of it, like it's literally once they get onto the island with the warp of life, that's when it changes because Princess Lana and Kevin still look concerned on the boat as well. So it's very clear, like it went all the way up to here, and it's like, okay, we need to change this right here. Like this is where we're going to do the cutoff, like because otherwise it makes no sense why they would continue to go along with this. Why Mega Girl like decided to save them? Like if it just none of it would have made any sense. It was just so shoehorned in at the very end. And once again, great episode. But
the other easier way to fix this would have been that they go to this island and he's about to do it, and then it's like Mother Brain. That's the reveal. That Mother Brain's the warp, and this will take your power away forever. And don't do it, Mega Man. Like that feels like that would have been a better ending,
Yeah.
And then you also get Mother Brain in it because Mother Brain's great.
Actually, this will be fun because I mean I would love to have you back on again for another Captain N episode in the future, Gabe, if you'd be interested.
Yeah.
What do you think about the design and like everything about Mother Brain in this show? We love Mother Brain in this show. We love the character of her.
Yeah, I think she's great. I think she's like one of my favorite designs ever. Like I think it's super weird that you could see the back of her head. Like you could see like lips on a piece of stretched flesh, and then there's like I don't know, it's so weird. And
I'm
then
always disappointed in the games that she doesn't look like the Mother Brain from the show.
but it's probably because of Audrey 2. I mean, because it's the same voice actor who did Audrey
Levi
2.
Stubbs.
Yeah. So
yeah, well, and did you know that Levi Stubbs? We talk about this on the first episode. He was one of the 4 tops.
Yeah,
I think I still blows my mind that.
But that makes sense to hire one of the guys from 4 Tops to do Audrey 2. Yeah. But then, why would it be the guy? Why would they want Audrey 2 for this? You know what I mean? Like that's what's weird to me. Like, and it's not a woman too. That's the other part. Like, why didn't they just hire a woman to do it? I don't know. Maybe it was like a friend or something. I don't know. So production, like I did a little research. I went.
Ooh, yes.
I was like looking at the credits, and Jeffrey Scott is a story editor, but he probably wasn't the showrunner though. Like Michael Maliani was, and he went on to do like Dino Saucers, a ton of stuff until 2008. So I was looking at his IMDb, and it was like he did a ton of stuff. And Jeffrey Scott also before this he did like Muppet Babies, or he went on to do Muppet Babies. Before this he did like Hulk Hogan's Rocket Wrestling, and like you could tell that this is like definitely in the same vein of that kind of stuff. But I was looking when I was watching the credits. I even go through like all the because usually I'll recognize one name or someone I've worked with or like someone I knew or a friend of a friend, because I came in way later in animation, but I started maybe like 10, 12 years after this was made, and I was looking at the recording assistants, and it was Mark McCorkle and Robert Schooley. They're known as Mark and Bob, right? And they're the creators of Kim Possible. So
Whoa.
it's really weird that they were recording assistants, and then they must have worked their way up to be writers, and then eventually pitched a show to Disney and landed Kim Possible. And I actually worked with them before on the Penguins of Madagascar. They were showrunners on that, and then I also worked with them on a couple of Disney shows too. A couple of their Disney shows, because they're like Disney guys. Like they're back at Disney now too. They've been there for like forever.
That's so
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, and usually like when I'd look at these credits, I'd see all the board artists, and I'd recognize one or two board artists. I even worked with some, like I was watching Kid Video, because I watched these things as a kid and I don't know names or anything, and then now I go back and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Eddie Fitzgerald. I've worked with him. He was like the storyboard editor or the storyboard supervisor for this, and it's so weird. I never even like asked him about it because I never went back and watched it.
Yeah.
And but now I'm curious to know, because I didn't even think about Mark and Bob, and I want to go back and like ask them like what was it like to work on Captain N? How
much input were you given, especially because like Nintendo back then was either they were a lot less hands off, I believe, because you can tell by looking at like what the Super Mario Brothers movie, where it's like, well, we don't know animation, we trust that you do, so you do animation and we'll just hope that it turns out for the best.
I think the way it works from what I know is I knew someone that did the Mega Man cartoon, the really crappy one.
Yeah.
And
Fighting robot Mega Man.
Yeah, exactly. And that was also a Deke production too, like this one. And
Andy Hayward.
Yeah, and my friend, I worked with him a bunch. His name was Joe Horn, and he was either, I don't know what he was on the show, board artist, or I don't remember, but pretty high up. Like he had a lot of influence on the show, and he said that they were playing the games, they knew the characters. They even saw the anime, like the Mega Man anime, but they just did not. The studio would not let them do the show they wanted to do. Like they wanted like a Mega Man to look like a man, and to have like he was like a kid, and all the robots had humanoid proportions, and like that was definitely like, and the studio wanted that. So because I think what happens is that if they're making a Captain N, like. What I read about this show is they went to Nintendo and asked if they could make the show. So they probably half-assed the pitch together. Like, oh, let's just throw this in there and throw this in there and throw this in there. And then went to Nintendo. They said, we're going to make this show. And they're like, okay. And it probably wasn't even part of Nintendo that was like the Japanese part of Nintendo. It was probably like the US division saying, oh yeah, like here's the licensing rights. And they just license it out. And then next thing you know, they're watching it on TV. Like, the creator of Mega Man is like watching a kid, a baby that sounds like Popeye, like on TV, like that's what was going on in the 80s. It's really different now, but that's what was going on in the 80s,
I'm amazed how they got the licensing rights for Mega Man and Simon Belmont, because Konami or Capcom and Konami, like I guess they weren't as big back then though, so I wonder if it was just easier to it wasn't nearly as many hoops you would have to jump through to get the rights to be able to put Mega Man and Simon, because it's three companies in here. Like you have Nintendo with Kid Icarus, and you have Nintendo with Eggplant Wizard and
Metroid.
King Hippo and Metroid, and then you have Donkey Kong, yes, Conga Land, and then you have Capcom with obviously Mega Man. You also have Konami. You also have Square Enix, because there is like you have Enix, excuse me, because there is a Dragon Warrior on some of those, but I don't think it was nearly as that one. I think is easier to get away with.
Was Paperboy season 1, or you guys didn't get to Paperboy?
We didn't get to Paperboy.
Okay.
We didn't get to Paperboy yet. Next season, we have Game Boy is showing up. That's the first episode of season 2. Is
I had
the
that
Game
VHS.
Boy? You also have, let's see, Tetris is going to be one, Zelda 2, Fazanadu. Fazanadu has an episode. It's called The Feud of Fazanadu. I'm very curious about that one. Dragon Warrior. Marble Madness has a game, and the episode is called I Wish I Was Wombat Man.
Well, that's weird.
Is it a callback to Wombat Man?
From season 1? In season 1, Gabe, there's an episode where they are watching TV, and King Hippo and Eggplant Wizard comes in and pretends to be TV repairmen, and it shows a little bit of what they're watching, and it's like Donkey Kong as Indiana Jones, and it's but they're like flipping through channels, so they have like Donkey Kong as Indiana Jones, which was funny, and then you have Wombat Man. It was a really random like thing. Both Dex and I were like, that's actually kind of funny. So now I'm seeing this in season 2. There's going to be I Wish I Was Wombat Man episode. I'm kind of excited for this. I'm actually really excited for this. Who else gives a shit about Wombat Man except us?
Well, obviously the writers. Someone came up
Apparently.
with like, oh, when do I get to do my Wombat Man episode?
The description of it is Pitt. Oh, they actually changed his name to Pitt, maybe? I don't know. Kid Icarus must help his television hero deal with Mother Brain, but finds his TV hero may not be all he thought he was. So I guess Kid Icarus really likes Wombat Man, and it's, the don't meet your heroes lesson or something like that.
So back to production, like just the behind the show. Like, I guess this is during this time. I was reading a lot of like history about Deke and the studio, and they were running out of money, and I guess Saban bought them out and took over. So that's why it's Saban. It's also Saban Productions at the end, but Deke up front. But that also makes sense because Haim Saban and Shuki Levy did the theme and all the music for the show.
Yeah, I was going to say they wrote all the music for the first season, and then Michael Tavera did seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah, and I met Haim Saban. I worked at Saban when they were doing like that Spider-Man cartoon. I guess that's what they were making back then. I worked on some other like stuff that never got made, but I met Haim Saban, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy who composed like all this music that I love. And then reading more about it now, it's like, no, he was just the guy who got Shuki Levy all the work, and Haim Saban was just the guy who, when it was like basically the agent, like sold him,
Yeah.
And then they both made the money, and that's why Saban invested it, and then created Saban Productions. Like it's such a weird history, but like also like that also explains like because I was going back and looking at the credits too, and I noticed I didn't recognize any board artists, so that means that I think most of them are Canadian, and I think this is like a Canadian co-production because even all the voice actors are all Canadian too. So that means that they were probably producing it so they can get like a credit with the government. They'll pay for part of the production cost. So that's probably why the show was even made. It was like super like low budget, but then they said, oh, we can do this percentage of the production in Canada. So that's why they can get like a break, a tax break to boost the budget a little bit.
That makes sense. I always chuckle now when I hear old cartoons and I hear the character say "sorry" with the Canadian accent.
Princess like Lana says "sorry" in this episode. I noticed that. I was like, oh, that's a little Canadian of her.
There's the running gag in the OKKO TV show where every episode someone says "sorry" at some point, which I imagine is like a shout out to old cartoons.
I mean, because a lot of entertainment gets made up in Canada just because it's cheaper. They get right. There's like tax breaks and stuff like that.
I think like everyone was a Canadian voice actor except for Levi Stubbs and then Frank Welker in season 2. He was Game Boy. Right. So yeah, that's probably what happened.
I've been trying to. I would love to actually get some of the other voice. Like I said, I'm going to meet. Hopefully, unless something happens before then, I'm hopefully going to meet Venus Terzo at the end of this year. I'm hoping. I would love to. I actually tried to reach out to Gary Chalk because he does the voice of King Hippo, and I love King Hippo's voice in this. It is insane, and I still think this is. I think you know what this. I'm just going to say mine right now. I think my favorite episode is, honestly, I think it's the second one with the Howl's Bayou, only because it's where King Hippo and Eggplant Wizard are trying to get into a warp zone to go to Bayou Billy's world, or to Bayou Zone, and King Hippo's too big to fit into the warp zone. So Eggplant Wizard goes, nonsense. All you need is just a little lubrication. And then he squirts salad dressing all over him. And King Hippo's like, hey, this ain't lubrication. And that one scene still makes me laugh.
Yeah, his line delivery is great. Like the last episode, "Get your leg out of my belly button."
Well, also after he does that in the other episode, he goes after Eggplant Wizard puts salad dressing all over him, turns him into a salad, because the actual like incantation he says is like, he ends the incantation with like, turn King Hippo into a salad head, and he goes, "Ooh, I'll toss your salad." I love this show, man. There's so many jokes that show up in it that it just like, all right, that episode.
I mean, the writers probably knew what they were doing. Like that's
100%. Jeffrey Scott, we love you. Please come on the show.
Yeah, I would love to hear what the writers thought of these games, because they're probably like, oh, I don't know, it's like some guy. I don't know, we could just make him vain or whatever. That's
it's one of those,
like it's super weird.
Especially, I mean, Gabe, you would probably know better than I do because you've studied the history of animation a lot. But is it? I've heard stories like back in like the 80s and 90s where like a lot of these, when they were just pumping out cartoons just to market things to kids, there was so much of it that it was like, it's kind of like I don't know how best to describe it. Basically, like that thing from like the Flintstones, it's a living. You just kind of take a job just to get a paycheck, even if you have no emotional connection to the source material or whatever. So you're given like 2 weeks to cram out 13 episodes, or a week to cram out 13 episodes, and you just have to just bum rush through it. So I feel like this show really screams of that. Just like, let's just hire somebody. They have like 5 days to write 20 episodes or whatever, and they just got to get it out.
Well, I mean, there's like a little bit of that sweatshopness, but I think it's just also too, because this is what 80. This came out in 89. This aired December 2nd, 1989, right? And that means they must have started in 88. And I mean, Nintendo came out hit big in 87, right? So it must have been really easy to get these licenses back then, because they were like, what's that thing that kids are playing? Oh yeah, the little gray box, the Nintendo. Let's make what's in there? I don't know. What are the things in there? I don't know. There's a Castle One, and there's like a Robot Kid, and like, oh, there you go. There's the Catholic show, And then there was probably one guy who was in charge that cared about it, maybe, And then everyone else was like in their 20s at this point, so they probably didn't even play these games at all. They had these like. They have these big machines to make these shows, and there's like some poor guy who like gets a script and he's like, "This is Mega Man? I don't know. I just got to draw. I got to meet my quota." Like that's just how they were made. Just like It's not like people grew up loving the things and they did it. It's like, think of like 89. If someone was 25 working on it, right? They were born in the 60s, so they grew up with stuff from the late 60s, early 70s, So just they don't know what there's people probably not even played a video game that worked on it.
Yeah.
So
there was
especially the older people on the crew,
I was going to say, one of the things that Dexter and I noticed throughout the first season there was a lot of attention to detail to was actually the music. There's a lot of moments in the show where the music is bizarrely accurate to the game, specifically in Metroid. Mm-hmm. Like they have kind of like the same cadence of that dun 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 dun, that you kind of hear as like the dissonant type of music you hear in Metroid, and they would play music from I would hear stuff from like from Kid Icarus as well, like
they'd add that stuff in.
I mean, this episode had Super Mario Brothers 2? Or the underground music?
Underground music from,
Mm-hmm.
Which was weird, because Mario's not even in the show,
No.
Yeah.
But it's
they
like,
use a lot of Mario sound effects too.
They have a lot of really good nods to Nintendo properties in the music, more so than in the actual content of the show, like in terms of the storytelling and characters. Like I feel like the music has a lot of like really good cuts from the video games, which I was very surprised by. I still find it funny there's a lot of licensed music in this. Like a couple episodes ago, Gabe, obviously we couldn't hear it in the episode because you don't get it on YouTube anymore. They had the Bonanza theme song. Bonanza. or whatever it goes. They also have like Michael Jackson and Generation X and Billy Idol,
I wonder if it has
Stevie
anything to do
Wonder.
with Jeffrey Scott, because Jeffrey Scott did Muppet Babies, which was like Spider-Man, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, like all these things that they can't put in the show, like re-release the show because of.
They also did that stuff in Hulk Hogan Rock and Wrestling too. Like they would have like
Also
like a
Jeffrey Scott.
licensed song in there. You know?
Yeah.
That must be it, because once Jeffrey Scott was done with the show, at least according to Wikipedia, a lot of that licensed music is gone.
Huh.
Like they don't. It doesn't show any featured songs in the ones afterwards.
So he must put it in his scripts, like, you know, this is a montage with this music kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. But
when I was like, my history with this show is like, I remember because I was a big Nintendo freak when I was a kid, and I was 14 when this came out. Well, I guess the show premiered 88 or 80. I don't know. I was 13 or 14.
It premiered in 89. The first episode came out on September 9th, 1989.
And I was like, back then they used to do this thing where on Friday night they would show like the cartoons that would air that year, the next, like it was like a Friday night preview, and then Saturday those cartoons would start. And when I saw this, I was like freaking out. So like, this is amazing. Like this is gonna be the greatest show ever. And then you watch the first episode, like, like everything's wrong. Like even as a kid, I knew everything was wrong. It's like, okay, I didn't think that's what Mega Man sounded like. You know,
why would they give him a smoker's voice?
Yeah, like why does he sound like Popeye? You know, like, and then you know, I kind of liked Simon because I liked back like Castlevania, and then Donkey Kong. I don't know. It's so many weird choices. And then
Simon is like a surfer bro, like a vain surfer bro. Kid Icarus is a child, literally like something straight out of Rugrats. Like you could totally take his voice that he's doing in there, and it would probably fit in a Rugrats episode. Princess Lana is Princess. I mean, she's not from a game, so there is actually an episode of where Simon gets like hit on the head too many times, and he thinks he's Donkey Kong's child. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
The things I don't remember many things from the show because like I stopped watching it after season 1. Like because once Game Boy came in, I'm like, all right, it's cool that it's Frank Welker because I love Frank Welker, but I don't know, man. Like at that point, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
They added the Slimer to the show.
But the thing I remember from the first season is Video Olympics, of course. I think Video Olympics because it was like a 2-parter, right? Mm-hmm. And then, but there's one gag where like, isn't there a gag where like Simon rips the toenail off of Donkey Kong?
Oh,
like
yes.
he rips the. And it's like that. As a kid, I was like, like that was horrible. Like that's the one thing I remember from like the whole show. You know.
I had that same reaction when I watched it too. But as an adult, because I didn't watch this as a kid, I had that same reaction. I just went, huh? I felt a little queasy after seeing that one. Yeah. I think that's why I kind of like doing this now, though, because we only do these episodes once a month, just so that way, my listeners don't.
You can recuperate. You can recover from watching.
Yeah.
Misery loves company. We just have like.
Well, and it turns into Captain N week. So like before, before Dexter and I, we would record two episodes at once, but then scheduling kind of got in the way. So during the week, the Captain N week, I would watch each of these episodes 3 times, bare minimum. And I did that for this week as well. I watched it once on stream on Twitch with my viewers, once for all the notes, and then once this morning just for a refresher. So
I should have watched it again, but I couldn't do it.
I don't blame you. I love this show, but I love it more ironically than genuinely. Like I find it comforting just because it's so insane, but it's not something I'd want to put on if I'm looking for a fun cartoon to watch. Like I'd put it on if I want to be like, if I have a bunch of friends over, like, look at this. Isn't this weird? Look at Mother Brain's design. Look at this one. They're in the pleasure zone. Like, why would they name it this? But I don't know. I've been enjoying this season. I don't know about you, Dexter. I've been really enjoying this, like watching 13. We've done 13 of these. And actually, the day this episode gets released, not the time we're recording, but the day this episode gets released, it'll be out immediately following the Captain N-a-thon. So hopefully you all stop by. But for those who didn't, I did a full stream on Twitch, or at the time this comes out, it would be a full stream where Saturday night before this episode airs. So this episode comes out on June 12th. So Saturday the 11th, I'm going to be watching all 13 episodes in a row of Captain N, straight shot on stream. Everyone can watch with me. And then at the end of this episode, this is when this one actually is going to get released. So for those who did watch it with me, if anyone, first off, you're a hero because I put you through all this. Second of all, thank you because this was a lot of fun. And third of all, I hope you enjoyed it because I actually have been really enjoying this series like a lot.
No, it's been awesome. Like, I think we kind of touched on it when we first started this, but like, I was young when this came out, so like the memories that I have, and then like when I see it again and like relive it, like I tend to remember it as I'm seeing it. But it's definitely a lot of the visual stuff really stuck with me, and like I was saying earlier, like I'm realizing watching this now how much of an influence it had on me artistically. So I'm definitely gonna have to look into Phil Barlow and stuff as well because and we were kind of talking off mic before the show started, Josh, about like so many awesome drawings were done for like these really short gags, like the balling up of the Pleasure Zone guy. The drawing of that's really good, and then the Video Olympics episode when Eggplant Wizard's turning King Hippo into all these different kinds of vegetables, and they're doing these vegetable puns. Each one of those drawings of King Hippo as a different vegetable, like the design behind it was so good, like stuff like that.
Or
I
like
love it.
or like when Eggplant Wizard turns the entire end team into like the Eggplant end team.
Yes, yeah, and it's
Oh
just
yeah,
this,
that's
it's
great.
a split second, or it's maybe 2 second long gag, but the amount of design that had to go into those drawings, like it both hurts me because it's like I know how much work probably went into that, but at the same time, like I love it that they put that much effort.
I mean, they have to do it. I mean, if it's written in the script, it has
Yeah.
to be designed, and if it's not that animated, it's probably straight off the model sheet then. So that's probably why those drawings are so good because they're not like traced again or
Right.
animated weird or you know what I mean? Like it's just the straight design right from the designer,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably why they're so good. Plus Phil's like I love Phil Barlow. I think he's great. So
I really, and I, without knowing nearly as much about animation as either of you two, like I really enjoy a lot of the visuals of this show in general, despite, we were making fun of animation errors and stuff like that. Like the designs, like you're both saying, I really enjoy those. I actually really like, even like just like the backdrop, like the backgrounds, excuse me. I find them like interesting and like visually interesting to look at, even if they don't always make sense. The episode we had on Stefan Rees on, which Gabe, if you haven't followed him, I would definitely suggest it. You'd probably like it. He is the Art of Nintendo Power on Twitter. And he collects a lot of the artwork that artists did for the Nintendo Power covers, as well as even like some of the physical
stuff.
objects that they would like photograph. So like if there was like
he
like
had
the
an
clay
exhibit.
figures.
He
Yeah,
just
he did
had an
an
exhibit
exhibit
out in LA, right? Like California. Yeah.
Yeah.
He even hunted down the keychain, the original keychains that they used for the Sesame Street games. Like they used the art from these keychains, and he has those like in his collection.
That's cool.
Too. Yeah,
it's crazy. But he was on 2 episodes. He did episode 6, Wishful Thinking, and episode 7, 3 Men and a Dragon, and the names of these episodes, man. But in episode 6, we spent conservatively 15 minutes discussing the logistics of the plumbing of Videoland because there's this looks like a urinal on the side of a wall in the middle of a gymnasium somewhere in the Palace of Power, and it just has a snake with an arrow pointed down into this urinal looking thing in the wall. And we're like, what is this snake toilet? Like what where did this come from? Like what? Because Duke jumps down it.
We ended up deducing that was referencing like the spawn points of snakes in Kid Icarus, like how the snakes would come out. I think that's what we ended up thinking it was. But
is that what we did?
Like
I don't even remember that. It looked straight up like. And then it just kept, because we kept calling it a snake toilet. So then I kept thinking of Scrubs and the janitor with his roof toilet. We must conquer the roof toilet.
So who wrote the original like short story that was in Captain N. I mean, in Nintendo Power, because it started off as like a short story in Captain Power. I mean, in Nintendo Power, and then they made the show based on the short story.
Right. Because it was
According
supposed
to
to be
Wikipedia, it says Randy stuttered. I don't know how accurate that is, though.
because it was supposed to be Captain Nintendo, right? But they were worried about the whole advertising toys for cartoons at the time, I think.
Yeah.
I could see that. And according to Wikipedia, it's Randy stuttered, but I'd have to look at the source that it cites. It's from the source that Wikipedia cites for that tidbit of information is a book. So I can't even click on the link, but it's Television Cartoon Shows, an Illustrated Encyclopedia, 1949 through 2003, second edition by Hal Erickson.
I've got some homework to do.
I'm curious to know like how it went from short story to this show. Like
that is, I'd be very curious as well. I had no idea. I didn't, once, like I said off mic, I did little to no research for this. I just kind of, I just go in, I watch the episodes, and I react to it. But that is interesting. I didn't even think about like the origin of Captain N was from the magazine. You know what? I bet you I could reach out to Stephen Reese and he might be able to know. Like he might be able to, because he's had they did that, him and the Video Game History Foundation did that presentation where they kind of reunited a lot of the staff and artists from Nintendo Power and just talked about what was going on. I don't think Randy Stuttered was in that presentation, but I wonder if that's something that we could like. I wonder if I could find him. I wonder if I could just find Randy Stuttered. Go on to like LinkedIn or something. And
I'd be curious to know like how that happened. That's my big question. It's like I remember reading that story in Nintendo Power back in the day, and then I don't even think I put it together that it was Captain N. Because I guess it makes sense now though because Mother Brain was the villain in that short story.
Mm-hmm.
But the short story was like really dire, like it was very serious, and maybe that's why they said, okay, we'll make it Mother Brain, but we'll make it Audrey too, like maybe that's how it was developed, into a show.
I might be able to get a hold of Randy Stuttered. I found his LinkedIn and his website. He has his personal website on it.
Yeah, it's listed as him as well on the Captain N wiki.
All right, maybe I don't know. Maybe that would be crazy if I could get him on the show. He lives in Texas currently. So I don't know. Maybe that could be something in the future. But we should start wrapping this episode up. We went full length for this one. Normally these are mini episodes, but because it's a season 1 finale and because we have our esteemed guest Gabe on the episode, I wanted to make it a little bit longer for you all. I actually found I loved the end of this because you gave so much insight as to how it kind of works behind the scenes with this, and I understand like. You weren't physically there, but since you have all the experience, it was a really great insight to understanding like how animation works. And it's fascinating to me.
Yeah. I wasn't there either, but I have just gathering from what I've learned over the years. I think that's how it went. That's
I think it's a much more educated guess than me saying, oh, they just said, fuck it. That's pretty much all I. That's all I got. They did a lot of drugs. Yeah, they did a lot of drugs. Jeffrey Scott just had to get locked up in a room with a bunch of cocaine. No, that's not. I'm not saying that's what happened at all. That's a joke. Please don't.
You want him to come on the show, right? You can't say.
Yeah, I do. Jeffrey Scott, that's a joke. I promise you. But that should do it for this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all for listening. Season 2 of the Captain N series is happening next month. We're not delaying it. It's not like it's a season of a podcast where we have a break in between. We will be doing season 2, episode 1 next month, and that episode is called, I believe, Game Boy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it is called Game Boy. So we're getting the Game Boy in on this. And like you were saying, like Gabe was saying before, Frank Welker is the voice of Game Boy. So we are going to get some voice acting royalty is going to show up. Well, not on the episode. That'd be cool if I could get Frank Welker on the podcast, but he will appear in this episode. So
Frank's a very nice guy. He works on our show. He does voices on our show. Yeah. And but he does not do podcasts. He doesn't do like interviews and stuff. It's really weird.
Really?
He's like one of the most prolific voice actors ever, and he just doesn't. I don't know.
Hey man, to each their own. I get it. Like if you're a private person, you don't want to share it. And also maybe just like it's like I hope he doesn't have this relationship with like Transformers or anything like that, but like how Harrison Ford is with like Han Solo, where he's just so tired of people asking him about Han Solo.
No, Frank's not like that at all. Like I asked him, I said, can you still do Uni from Dungeons and Dragons? And he could still do it. So like,
Oh my god,
he's amazing, you know? Like, I don't even know how he could even do that anymore. He's in the 70s or whatever, you know? So
yeah.
he's
still working.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
he's great too.
What show is he on for you?
Animaniacs.
He's on Animaniacs? Okay.
Yeah, he's Ralph.
Ralph, yeah, I was going to say he's Ralph, isn't he? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and he does a bunch of other voices for us too if we have like background voices and stuff. So yeah,
That's so cool.
he's just unbelievable. He's so good. And you know, it's like he'll do like throw something out and it's like, oh yeah, that's the what's his name from Bionic 6. And you know, it's just like every voice I know of his.
He just has a Rolodex of
oh my gosh,
his
he's everybody. He was Jabberjaw. He's he's everybody. So he's Fred from Scooby Doo.
Yeah, Fred, Scooby. Yeah, he does Scooby now. Yeah,
he's the only voice actor consistently from the very first Scooby Doo till present day.
Yeah,
who's always been Fred. You know, except for the last Scoob movie, I guess.
Yeah,
but then he was Scooby in that movie. So.
That's insane.
That's so funny. Yeah,
I hope he works forever.
And my son watches PBS Kids, so I hear him doing Curious George all the time too. Frank Welker.
Yep.
That's amazing and awesome. Okay, so to wrap this all up, I wanted to give my guests here a chance to promote anything they'd like to promote. Gabe, since you are our esteemed guest, what would you like to promote? Is there anything that you'd like to share? We talked a little bit off mic about something that you just released somewhat recently, so what do you got?
Oh, yes. I just released a little play date game I've been working on for the last couple months. It's the first game I actually coded, so like, you know, real coding, not just like visual coding. But yeah, it's called Bobo Collect. You can get it on itch and side loaded onto your play date to play. And it's just a fun little action game. And, you know, I'm working on some other games and some other projects on the side. You know, just I'm still working on Animaniacs full time, and that's coming along quite nice. So, you know, you can find me on Twitter or wherever. Just Gabe Swarr, Swarr. That's it.
All right, Dexter. What about you?
Same spiel as always. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. It's just my name, Dexter Morrill. Last name is spelled Morrill. You should find me on there. I'm usually just posting my artwork, talking about video game stuff, sharing that kind of stuff. But you can find me on there. If I can plug my students, I do teach art as well. They just did an awesome master copy for their final project where I give them each a section of a drawing or like a piece of art, and they each have to do a piece. And they did this 6-foot tall Batman and Superman cover recently. It came out really well, and I was sharing that on social media. So check out their stuff too. They're brilliant artists. But
Cool.
yeah, check me out on social media. I'll be there.
And as usual, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. If you want to email me, you can email me stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, you can do it in a number of ways. You can give it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use that helps more people find the show. You can also support it monetarily, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $1 a month, you'll get the episodes a few days early at a higher bit rate and access to a patron-exclusive Discord. For $5 a month, you can get all of that plus 2 bonus episodes a month. So patreon.com/stillloadingpod. But the most important shout out, and any hard-earned money you have, if you want to give it to anything, don't give it to me. Check out the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of kids receiving inpatient care at hospitals. So if you want to support them, go to bitbybitfoundation.org and consider donating. And that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Dexter, Gabe, thank you both so much for joining me. And Dexter, as usual, you'll be back next month for more Captain N. Gabe, thank you once again, man. I love having you on the podcast, and I wish I was better at making small talk over email, because I would love just to actually communicate with you when I'm like outside of just being like, hey, you want to come on the show? That kind of thing. But thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I feel a big honor to talk about. Plus, I love Captain N. It's great. It's a great show.
And don't forget how we sign out now, Josh.
Oh yeah, how did we sign out in the last episode? It was, I will think of you that every time, or I'll think of you the next time I play video games.